Okay, think about the device that's probably, well, right near you now, maybe even in your hand, your smartphone. It feels so seamless, right? It's so integrated into everything. But do we ever really stop and think about how it gets here? The journey from, raw materials all the way to our pockets?
It's a complex journey, that's for sure, and usually pretty hidden from view.
Exactly. So today we're going on a deep dive. We're looking into the rarely seen world of how one specific device, the iPhone, actually gets made.
And we have some incredible source material for this, a first-hand account, you
Yeah,
know.
really rare stuff is from a man, Jen Zhang, who worked undercover inside a Chinese iPhone factory. So we get this unfiltered look behind the curtain.
Amazing. Which factory was this?
He was at a Packatron factory in Shanghai. Packatron, for context, is one of the big players, a major contract manufacturer Apple uses.
All right, Packatron. Got it.
So our mission today is basically to pull out the key insights from his experience. Give you a shortcut, really, to understanding the daily grind, the conditions, the human stories behind this huge manufacturing operation.
Sounds fascinating. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this. So Jen Zane's job,
Mhm.
it was unbelievably specific.
How specific are we talking?
He spent his entire shift putting in just one screw.
One screw. Seriously?
Yep, the one that fastens the speaker to the back case of the iPhone. That was it.
Wow. And how long was his shift?
12 hours a day. Started at 7:30 in the morning.
12 hours doing the same single motion?
Well, technically it was 10 and a half hours of actual work time. They deducted
Yeah.
break times. But yeah, 10 and a half hours of just that one screw.
The monotony must have been
He
intense.
definitely mentioned that. Said it led to, significant boredom, just repeatedly doing the exact same thing.
I can only imagine. And the pay for this?
It was 3,100 Chinese yuan per month.
Okay. What's that roughly in US dollars?
About 450 USD.
Yeah.
And that includes his base pay plus any overtime.
$450 a month for that kind of work schedule.
Wow. And just one day off a week, usually Sunday.
It really highlights this extreme micro-specialization, doesn't it? I mean, taking a complex assembly process and breaking it down so far that one person's entire contribution is a single screw over and over.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the psychological side of it. Doing something that de-skilled for hours on end, what does that do to your sense of, well, purpose?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And to really get a sense of his world, you have to picture the scale.
How big was this place?
Huge. Jen Zhang estimated around 70,000 workers were there when he was.
70,000.
Yeah. He described the campus itself as pretty big.
Yeah.
It had 7 sub-factories, all part of this one main campus.
Just try to picture that. 70,000 people each doing these tiny repetitive tasks.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling.
And with that many people, you need structure.
Yeah.
Strict rules, like the uniforms.
Ah, yes. What did they have to wear?
A specific outfit.
Yeah.
Blue hat, pink shirt, blue pants.
Okay.
And get this, they only got one set.
Only one? Wow.
And they lose slippers inside the factory floor.
Slippers. Okay. And security must have been tight too, right? With that many people and, well, Apple products.
Extremely tight. Before even getting near the production floor, workers had to hit a locker room, store everything. Phones, keys, anything metal.
Makes sense.
Then entry involved swiping a card, passing face recognition.
Face recognition too.
Yep, and then waiting in line for a metal detector.
Standard procedure, I suppose, for high-value manufacturing.
But here's where it gets really interesting. As you mentioned earlier, the security changed.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Jen Zhang noticed it depended on which iPhone they were making. During the iPhone 6S production, it was that one metal detector process.
Okay.
But when they started making the iPhone 7, security ramped up. They added another card swipe and another metal detector, specifically on the 4th floor.
Huh. That's fascinating. That escalation, it really points towards maybe increased secrecy or maybe just the perceived value of the newer components.
Could be. Definitely a higher level of control for the newer generation product.
Yeah, absolutely. So these 70,000 people, who were they mostly? What were they like?
He described the workforce as mostly male, generally young, like 18 to 30.
Okay.
And he actually found them very social, friendly, said they had interesting, unique characteristics, not just, faceless drones.
That's good to hear. It humanizes it a bit. Did they use the iPhones they were building?
That's another interesting point. Mostly no. He said most workers used cheaper, China-produced phones. iPhones were very rarely earned among the workers themselves.
Wow. So a real disconnect between the product they spend all day making and what they use in their own lives.
Definitely. So outside the factory floor, Where did everyone live?
Right, the dorms.
Yeah, there were multiple dorms, some right there on the campus, others off campus. Zhang's was off campus, about a 10-minute shuttle bus right away.
And what were the rooms like?
Crowded.
Very. 8 people living together in one room.
8 people.
Wow.
And the
Yeah.
facilities. For an entire floor, maybe 20 rooms, so around 200 people. Just one shared restroom and one shared shower bathroom.
One for 200 people
Approximately, yeah.
per floor. That paints a picture. It's clearly a system built for, well, efficiency and low cost, not comfort.
Pretty stark contrast to typical living situations, yeah.
And you have to wonder how sharing such basic amenities with so many people shapes daily life, the social dynamics.
For sure. What about food? Where do they eat?
Several places inside the factories. The workshop building apparently had like 8 different combo meals.
Any cheap options?
Yeah, he mentioned noodles with just vegetables, no meat, for about 5 yuan.
Okay, so what do they do for fun? Or, to unwind after those long shifts?
A lot of it seemed to happen in the dorms. Watching movies on their phones was common, or
Oh.
they'd go out to internet cafes, play video games. League of Legends was popular.
Ah, okay. Like young people everywhere?
Pretty much. And on that one day off, Sunday,
Yeah.
a big activity was heading to a large market near the campus. Lots of restaurants there.
A chance to get out.
Exactly. Getting something like roast chicken was a real treat. They'd gather, maybe have some beers with friends, a moment to connect.
That sounds nice, actually. A small pleasure.
Yeah, but even then, there were rules, strict dorm rules. No drinking or smoking inside the dorms.
Okay.
And apparently you weren't allowed to even enter the dorm if you were drunk or seemed wasted.
Really? Why was that?
Because of past problems.
Yeah.
Fights breaking out between workers who'd had too much, so they cracked down.
Control, even in their downtime.
Seems like it. But despite all this, the tough conditions, the monotony, Zhang did share these little moments, fleeting maybe, but moments of human connection.
Like what?
Like at the very end of the shift, when the line manager would start counting down the remaining pieces they needed to finish.
Oh.
Yeah, like shouting out 500 left, then 200. And in those moments, he said, workers would actually smile, start talking to each other.
That shared sense of relief. Almost done.
Exactly. He said that's when they felt really good. A collective exhale, maybe?
That's powerful, those small moments.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned some much harder realities he described.
Yeah, those moments of relief are important, but they stand against a pretty harsh backdrop. The management style, for instance.
What about it?
Zhang said yelling at workers was just kind of a routine, very common.
Oof. Not great for morale, I imagine.
Definitely not. And then there were the physical structures related to mental health, or rather desperation.
What do you mean?
The suicide prevention measures. Nets installed in the stairwells.
Nets, like
Yeah.
safety nets.
Yeah, and cage-like bars or ceilings on the windows, specifically to prevent workers from jumping.
Wow. That's chilling.
It really is. It's not just about security leaks anymore. It's a physical manifestation of the extreme psychological pressure cooker environment this kind of mass production can create.
It forces you to confront the human cost, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Beyond just the wages or the hours.
Absolutely. The deep human challenges tangled up in this global supply chain.
Did Zhang get a sense of how workers felt about their jobs overall? Pride, resignation.
Mostly resignation, it sounds like. He said workers generally were not proud of their work. For most, it was just a job that can give them money, a means to an end.
And that probably explains the turnover rate.
Exactly. He mentioned a really high turnover, people leaving after just like 2 weeks sometimes, or maybe a month. Very transient.
So when we pull all this together, what does it all mean?
Well, we see these stark contrasts, right?
Definitely. You've got this incredibly precise, advanced piece of technology, the iPhone. Sleek, powerful.
And then you have the reality of its creation. Very human, often incredibly repetitive, sometimes, well, deeply challenging.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it? Behind every single one of these devices, there's this whole complex world of human labor, specific conditions, massive scale.
Yeah, and this deep dive into Zhang's experience, it really prompts a bigger question, I think.
Which,
When we marvel at the speed and efficiency of modern manufacturing, this global machine, do we actually pause to consider the day-to-day lives of the millions of individuals who make it run?
their experiences are fundamental, but so often invisible.
Exactly. They're essential to these products existing, but we rarely see or think about them.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Mm-hmm.
Next time you pick up your phone, or really any product,
Yeah.
just take a second. Consider the unseen stories, the human experiences woven into its creation. What other things we use every day might have similar hidden journeys behind them?
That's a great takeaway, something to definitely mull over.